Hi guys, Jackie from Famished Farm, and we are back working on our recipe stash for this week as we meal plan for the week. And we've got 3 new recipes we're going to try. The first one is from Real Simple Magazine for Meatless Monday, a meatless veggie patty. And I kind of like that one because it said you could play around with the veggies you add to it. So that one sounds good. The second one is a ground chicken and green bean stir fry, also from Real Simple Magazine. When I'm reading, that's one of the few magazines I subscribe to, and I just rip out the recipes I want to try. And these were both current. I've got some that are years old, but these are pretty current recipes. And then the last thing, well, let me tell you what we're going to do to finish out the week, and then we'll go into the third new recipe. So we're going to be going out for dinner one night. Cinco de Mayo is on Sunday. And then we're going to do burgers on the grill one night. We have a leftover of our chicken and rice casserole that we made a couple weeks ago. And then the last meal is from my husband, but it's kind of a question mark because he hasn't actually decided what he wants yet. Now, the third recipe I'm going to call kind of an ongoing segment called Mom's Favorites. And what I did recently, I'm decluttering the year of minimal me, and this is her recipe box, and it's huge. It had room for 2 groups of recipes up there, and then the same in this little container. And so what I did is I ended up saving out of all those recipes about an inch stack of recipes. And on some of them, like this one, this is handwritten. I thought this was my grandma's writing, but apparently not, because on the back of it, it says, Polly's potatoes, everyone loves them. And then she wrote a little note, I miss Polly a lot, there. And then she also wrote down on the bottom here, Jackie, try this. So I've got to try this recipe. But what I thought would be interesting is to she had like categories of recipes that she really liked. And one of the things that her and Dad must have really liked were chicken and potato type recipes, which we're all diabetic, so that kind of makes sense. We like our starches. So I'm going to take the 2 recipes from her and combine it with a recipe that I found online that is for a chicken potato bake. And this one came from dizzybusyandhungry.com. And it had like 4.25 stars from 941 votes, so pretty highly rated. And I thought this current recipe would be a healthier, more up-to-date as far as techniques and ingredients. Whereas this one, she doesn't even list the ingredients, she just tells you what to do. So for instance, slice potatoes, leaving skins on, dip in melted margarine, and line a large glass casserole side and bottoms. I make lots of extra potatoes and then put them on a cookie sheet to brown them. Then double layer the casserole with potato slices. Put in a 400-degree oven till browned, yada, yada, yada. So you have to read the recipe to get all the ingredients. And then the other favorite that Mom had was she subscribed to Taste of Home. And this one is from October, November of 2001. And Taste of Home, if you've ever tried their recipes, they're usually delicious, and a lot of times submitted by, this one is Helen Lamison from Carnegie, Pennsylvania. And they're not known for being the healthiest recipes, but I wanted to mash up these 3 recipes and come up with the new recipe that I'm going to make this week while honoring my mom. So that's what's on the menu. And if you'll stick around, I'll show you how I'm going to kind of mash up that recipe. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for the cooking. Okay guys, so what we're starting with is we'll call this one the recipe from Mom, our inspiration recipe. And this was basically a potato bake. It did not have chicken in it. So I'm combining her favorite from Taste of Home. I'm going to combine as far as ingredients go. And anyway, so for instance, the potatoes, this one wants you to slice the potatoes, leaving the skin on. This one called for, this is the Taste of Home, called for using frozen hash browns. And the updated recipe called for 4 medium potatoes cut in cubes. And now most of these recipes are for 9 by 13 pans, but because it's just Rod and I'm going to make a square. It's probably equivalent to like an 8-inch square. So we're going to take our chicken bake and we're going to start with chicken potato bake. And we're going to start with, let's say 2 medium potatoes. And I like the idea of leaving skins on. I usually do that anyway. So we're going to leave skins on, and then we're going to, slicing is easier than cubing, but either one I think would be nice. And as far as the different techniques for that, dip in margarine. This one is use olive oil, 1.5 tablespoons. This is the Taste of Home, 6 tablespoons of butter. So what I would like to do is, let's stay with olive oil. And in the notes to this new recipe, she says that she's used as little as 1/2 tablespoon to the 1.5 tablespoons. So I'm going to just put that range on the recipe. And the technique then will be to slice or cube the potatoes and then mix with olive oil. But because we know we want these potatoes to be seasoned, this one, the old recipe, the inspiration recipe, didn't do any seasoning of the potatoes other than the butter. I think it's a much better idea to season your potatoes. She had them seasoned with salt, pepper, and Parmesan cheese. So I like the idea of, and let's compare. This one was salt and pepper and minced garlic. And then this one has, basically the potatoes are just salt and pepper. But then down in the recipe, the filling, what goes inside or along with the potatoes is onion. Oh, they're making a roux. So we're not going to do that because that's calorie laden. But she has chicken bouillon, which I could use my nutritional yeast chicken bouillon that I made a while back. And she's got Worcestershire and basil. So let's pull a combination. This one said 2 teaspoons of bouillon. Let's say 1 teaspoon plus of chicken bouillon. And garlic salt, or garlic, minced garlic. We can do minced. Minced or powdered, whatever you have. I would do just 1 clove minced. Salt and pepper. And I usually salt very lightly, but I do lots of pepper. So I'm going to strike the salt and see how we do without it. Because of the chicken bouillon and the garlic, that might be enough. Now, further down on the Taste of Home recipe, the ultra delicious one, because it's full of calories, has Worcestershire and basil. And this one had the Parmesan and the mozzarella. The Worcestershire, I'm going to put in parentheses if we need to boost up the flavor. And that was 1/2 teaspoon for half a recipe, but I'm going to put 1 teaspoon. And basil, just a question mark. And we'll see how we do. And then the cheese, This one had mozzarella, and this one, meaning the updated one, had mozzarella sprinkled on the top. So I'm just going to write cheese. You can use less Parmesan. I like that idea. So I'm going to put Parmesan, and I'm going to put a 1/4 cup, but I'm going to put mozzarella down below just in case. And this one said 3/4 cup in case we want to make any changes to the recipe. And then as far as adding the chicken, this one added 1.5 pounds boneless, skinless chicken breast or thighs. She says in her notes she likes to use thighs. This one, the Taste of Home, called for 3 cups of cubed cooked chicken. And I would probably do chicken thighs or breast, just depending on what I had in the freezer. And I would probably prefer to actually bake this like the newer recipe suggests, to put it in the oven at 425 and basically bake it until the chicken is done. Now, the new recipe doesn't call for searing the chicken at all. I think that is really a good thing if you're using skin on meat. If you're using cooked chicken, I think you could just throw that right in. So I'm making that note. And that basically, this one then has you to sprinkle the parsley on top. The inspiration recipe now vegetables, I forgot vegetables. The Taste of Home has peas. This one has, you can use 2 bags frozen vegetables, any medley or combination. So I'm going to just put peas or combination of veggies. Actually, I'm going to cross off peas because Rod's not a huge pea person, and I've inundated him with peas recently. So let's just do, and I might do broccoli. This sounds, chicken and broccoli is a classic. So, okay, cook your vegetables, sprinkle them on top of the drain, and then sprinkle. I'm going to put drain veggies. And then sprinkle with cheese, and the remaining, this one used melted butter. So maybe you, no, I think if you put the cheese on it and sprinkle with Parm or whatever cheese you're going to use. But I kind of like that idea. Let's see this one. Let's double check. So this one has a roux, and they're going to thicken that flour and butter with 2 cups of milk, and then add the basil and the Worcestershire to that. So it's going to be very saucy. I think if this cooks with uncooked chicken, I think it's going to be saucy enough. With the potatoes, I think those chicken juices going in with the potatoes are going to be good. And then the hit of Parmesan on the top, I think that sounds really good. So anyway, so that's how it stands right now. 2 medium potatoes with the skin on, sliced or cubed, olive oil to coat them in, and then add your spices, a teaspoon of chicken bouillon powder, minced clove of garlic, your salt and pepper. I'm not only using pepper. And then if you need a more flavor, Worcestershire and or basil. And then we'll sear, if we're using uncooked meat, we'll sear the chicken. If we're already cooking it, we're just going to add that in on top of or along with the vegetables, whatever combination of partially cooked. I think that's important. We're only going to partially cook, like the broccoli especially, because that will get, if it, cooks at a different rate than the chicken. So we'll only hit that in the microwave for a few minutes, maybe 3 minutes. I'm going to put 3 minutes and see what happens. And I think that sounds good. So this is our chicken bake, and we have a bit of grated Parmesan with a little Asiago in it that I'm trying to use up. 1 clove of garlic that I've minced, and use more if you're a garlic lover. We've decided we're going to use this small casserole. It's roughly an 8x8. And I've got some russet potatoes. One that is small to medium. The other one is definitely medium. And I'm just going to chop these. I decided not to slice them. I will chop them, leaving the skins on. And we do that to both potatoes. This recipe is very forgiving. Could basically be a one-pot recipe if you had cooked chicken, and shredded hash browns would be very easy to throw together. I went with the cubes instead of the slices. I just thought the cubes would be easier to get coated with the olive oil, which once we get these all in the pan, this is both potatoes, then we're going to put on, I did about a tablespoon, maybe a little shy of a tablespoon, and threw that garlic in. Then we're going to salt and pepper, give it a stir. And as we move over to the stovetop, I've taken chicken breast out of the freezer, and I've cut those in half because they were some of the pretty thick chicken breast, and we're just going to give those a sear. Now, if you had rotisserie or already cooked chicken left over from another dinner, use that. This is, again, a pretty versatile recipe that you could use up what you've already got. And you could use chicken thighs. You could also use bone-in, skin-on, if that's what you had. So the searing step is not necessary, but I do think that it adds some nice color and flavor to the pieces of chicken. And this only took about 3 or 4 minutes on each side. And I do end up squeezing this 4th piece in there. And we just get both sides seared. Now you're not cooking this all the way through. I'm going to be throwing this in the oven. So that's the plan. Right here I decide that pan is never going to be big enough for a bag of broccoli and this chicken. So I go with my slightly bigger, it's like a 9x7 casserole. And I put my potato pieces in there to make sure it looks like it's going to be plenty big enough. And it is going to be just fine. I'm using my cast iron for this, but I could have used easily my wok to do the searing part of it. It does not require cast iron. Once all the pieces are seared on both sides, then we're going to just nestle those on the potatoes. But oops, I forgot. Let's put that broccoli on first. So I throw those back in this other pan that I already had dirtied. And then spread the broccoli pretty evenly over the potatoes. And then we're going to just sprinkle some basil. And I did forget, of course, my nutritional yeast chicken bouillon. So that could have been just mixed in with the potatoes, would have been just fine. This was okay without it. Would be better with the chicken bouillon mixed in. And then we're going to put the chicken pieces back on top of the broccoli potato mix. And then I've also got my Worcestershire out that I'm going to give a quick shake. And then I probably end up putting roughly a teaspoon on each one. This step is not necessary, but again, gives it a little more flavor. Okay, now's the time to put your last seasoning on. I did just pepper. And then I'm going to put the cheese on, our Parmesan Asiago blend. And I think I shredded about a cup, and I probably used a good 1/2 to 3/4 of a cup of the cheese. And then I just saved the rest of the cheese for later. I've preheated my oven to 350. I wish I had done 400 degrees. I had to take the chicken out because it was done, and then put the potatoes back in the oven for another 15-20 minutes at 400 to get the potatoes done. All in all, easy, delicious. Our next one is a ground chicken and green bean stir fry, and here I'm just prepping the sweet peppers, and I bought a 3-pack, so I've got a yellow and an orange. It calls for 2 orange. Do whatever you've got. You could use green if that's what you've got, and just slice them up. Now, I cut my peppers kind of weird probably, but these are traditionally farmed peppers. They're not organic, so I do cut off the part where the stem is, or rip it off. And that's kind of where the pesticide accumulates, so I choose not to use that portion of the pepper, but just give these a little slice. And then the green beans, I'm going to put in the microwave for about 3-4 minutes to just get them not frozen. I've had a pan of water on for the rice, and I'm going to give that a stir. I've rinsed the rice, and then I'll cook it here for 15 minutes with the cover on. And now we're going to make our sauce, and we're starting with 3 tablespoons of oyster sauce, 2 tablespoons of soy sauce, and I don't have mirin. It calls for 2 tablespoons, so I use 2 tablespoons of that and just a little bit, maybe a teaspoon or so of sugar. And then we'll give that a stir. Oh, don't forget the garlic. The recipe calls for 3 tablespoons. That's not right. 3 cloves or 1 tablespoon chopped. I just do 1 clove. We are not huge garlic people, so just a flavor, not overpowering for us. And then we give this a stir. The recipe also calls for a tablespoon of sliced red Fresno chili. I was going to use powdered, but I do have some pickled jalapenos in the fridge, so I just do about a teaspoon, half a tablespoon or so, and then add that and give it again a quick stir. So we're back over on the stovetop, and we've got about a tablespoon of olive oil in our wok, and we're going to add the green beans and those pepper slices, and you're just going to sear these. You want a nice color, some char to the vegetables. And while I'm doing that, the timer goes off for the jasmine rice, so I give that a fluff, and then I'll set that aside and let it finish steaming. We'll give these veggies a quick stir too, and once those are done, we just set those on a plate. And then we're going to add our 1 pound of ground chicken. Go ahead and use ground turkey if that's what you've got. This is still just very slightly frozen in the center, so I'm going to chunk it up good. Now again, we're going to let this meat brown, so give it 5-6 minutes so it's cooked through and got some nice color to it. I give that a quick sprinkle of salt too and mix up, continue cooking, and basically in your 4, 5, 6 minutes this is going to be nicely browned, and then you are going to add back those pepper slices and the green beans. Now, what you're doing here is adding the sauce also, and so you just want to bring everything back up to temperature and then allow that sauce to slightly thicken so it will coat the chicken and vegetables. Now, at this point, I am not going to cook it down until that sauce is thickened, because this is going to go back in the refrigerator for dinner another night. But I did test the sauce and everything. It's delicious. And our last recipe is a vegetarian vegan recipe, Veggie Patties, and we're starting with my flaxseed that I'm trying to get used up. So we're doing a vegan egg, and we're going to do 2 tablespoons of flaxseed and 1/4 cup of water. And this says to put it in a large bowl. I didn't catch that, so this is a small bowl. It's just, you will save a bowl if you do it in the bigger bowl. You're gonna give it a stir so everything's hydrated, and then let that sit to the side. It takes about 15 minutes for it to firm up. And then we're gonna start by grating our cucumber. Oh, that's not a cucumber, that's a zucchini. We're gonna grate that, and then a little bit of onion. The recipe calls for a 1/2 cup of grated onion. I did about half of that with this red onion. And then we're going to take the colander over to the sink and put those grated vegetables into the colander. We're going to kind of flatten them out and then put a little bit of salt on top and let that draw some of the water out of these vegetables, and we'll just let them sit there for a bit. The recipe from here calls for a cup of grated broccoli or cauliflower. I have saved out this cauliflower from a bag of cauliflower we opened for dinner last night, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get it grated. So I decided to put it back in the steamer bag, just put a rubber band on it, and pre-cook that for about 3 minutes in the microwave. And the recipe calls for 2 cloves finely chopped. I'm doing 1 clove minced. If you like garlic, add as much as you like. And I finally figure out that I'm supposed to have a large bowl for everything. So here's my large bowl that I'm just going to add that minced garlic right to. While I'm doing that, the timer goes off for the cauliflower. So I pull my food processor out, and we're just going to rice this cauliflower quick. Save yourself the time and the cleanup by just buying rice cauliflower. And then over here, we're gonna go ahead and get the water drained out of this zucchini and grated onion. So I have just not a piece of cheesecloth. This is just a towel that I use for these kind of things. And you're gonna squeeze that for a couple minutes really hard to get that water out. Back over at the island, we have the garlic in the bowl. We're adding our grated cauliflower, and then we'll add our zucchini mix with onion. We will stir all this up together, add that flax egg sitting there, and then we're going to pull out some chickpea flour. The recipe calls for chickpea or all-purpose flour. That's going to let everything bind together along with this flaxseed egg, and then just mix it thoroughly. Oh wait, you still have some more spices to add. It calls for a 1/4 cup of chopped parsley. I'm going to use about a tablespoon of dried. And then you want to throw some salt and or pepper in here. 2 tablespoons of olive oil. Use what you've got. Here's the salt finally, and then get to mixing it up. Mix thoroughly. The recipe calls for doing these in about 2 tablespoon size balls. I'm just going to use my ice cream scoop and do as many as I can get out of that. You want to go for about a 1/4 inch thickness on these, and mine were probably a little more than that, probably on the thicker side, maybe a 1/2 inch. I just cooked them longer. And here's a little tip. If you're doing something like this and it's going to be sticky, I just grab a little bowl of water to moisten my hands, and it keeps all of that veggie flour mixture from sticking to your hands. And it makes it much easier to flatten these into nice patties. This recipe, everything held together in the preparing the patties and the cooking, so I really like that. And I didn't get my camera turned on, but it's basically 2 tablespoons of oil in my skillet. And it calls for browning these until crisp on both sides, 2 to 3 minutes on medium high. And I can tell you on my stove, it was medium high, but that was way too hot for this. Wish I had done more like a medium low. And I cooked those to the 2-minute end of the spectrum instead of 3 minutes. You'll see when I flip them over from cooking that the one did get very dark. It was dark, but it was not burned. And I always get the dark things, so Rod doesn't have to try to eat that. Now we're going to get these last 2 patties in and cooked roughly for 2 minutes on each side. This calls for serving with ranch. I'm going to do that or something like a crema. So this chicken potato bake, this is the picture from our updated recipe that I'll have the links in the description of this video. But this was a kind of a nostalgic recipe for me, but one that we'll keep in our recipe folder. with Mom's information on it. So what would I change? What would I do different? I would not forget the chicken bouillon. I would probably switch out the garlic for onion in the next iteration of this recipe. Keep the Worcestershire, the basil. I really like the Parmesan on it, but you could do mozzarella. And the baking at, I need to write that down, bake it at 400 degrees. I've had it in the oven probably for an hour and 5 minutes, but if I had done it at 400 degrees, it might have been less than that. So this is the picture from the magazine. Note the long green beans and the pretty red peppers. This is mine. You're supposed to use fresh green beans. I used what I had in the freezer, so this was just a, frozen cut green beans. I didn't have that red Fresno pepper, but still, this was delicious. If you're totally going for a simple, easy, quick stir fry, this one says 25 minutes and really could be 25 minutes easily. What would I change? I don't know that I would change anything. The sauce on it was delicious. Maybe I could have gone a little heavier on the pepper. I used those pickled jalapenos out of the fridge. But we enjoyed it, and we always enjoy rice. We don't have rice very often, so this was a really good dinner. Our final recipe from Real Simple was the Veggie Patties. This is the picture from the magazine, and then my picture with the one in the middle that's slightly overcooked. But again, these were delicious. Definitely do a sauce with them if you are not a vegetarian or vegan. We like that extra flavor. Just the veggie alone doesn't quite get us, so we did do a crema sauce on top, and I'll try to find a link to that recipe for you. But this was a good Meatless Monday recipe. It's not something that we would make during the week probably, but if we're trying to get something quick on the table on Mondays, this would fit the bill. It says that it takes about 35 minutes, and with all of the shredding and chopping and grating, yeah, that's probably pretty much dead on. Maybe a little quicker for us because we only did the 6 patties instead of the 16 that they showed. And I was thinking about that. If you do the smaller patties, definitely watch your cooking temperatures, because you might end up with overcooked like I did. But give these a try if you're looking for something to kind of expand your recipe repertoire to include vegetarian meals. This might just do the trick.